following Christ is not a straight or easy path. There are moments when faith feels steady and alive, but there are also seasons when both you and I feel it tremble. Doubts creep in. Weariness settles into the soul. The heart grows heavy under the weight of unanswered questions and unspoken fears. These struggles are not signs of weak faith, they are part of what it means to truly follow Christ in a broken world. C.S. Lewis understood this deeply. He did not offer shallow comfort or easy answers. Instead, he spoke honestly about the pain of discipleship, the kind of pain that reaches into the deepest parts of the heart. He knew that the most difficult truth for a believer to face is this: the things we love most must be placed before God. Without condition and without reservation, this realization wounds us. Surrender does not feel noble or beautiful in the moment, it feels like loss. It feels like we are being asked to give up a piece of ourselves. When God asks us to release what we cherish most, it can feel as though we are being stripped of something irreplaceable, left empty and exposed. And so the question rises within us: what do we do when God asks for the very thing we are most afraid to lose? We cling tightly to people, to relationships, to dreams we have nurtured for years. We hold on to the bonds that shape our identity and give us a sense of meaning. And inside us, a battle begins. We know God asks for everything. Yet everything comes at a cost. Lewis described this divided love as a sword piercing the soul, an inner conflict that never truly rests. We long to give our hearts fully to God, but fear stands in the way. Fear of loneliness. Fear of emptiness. Fear of what life might look like if we truly let go. We ask ourselves, what happens after surrender? What if I give everything and God does not give it back? What if the altar leaves me empty? Often, we try to reason our way out of full devotion. We tell ourselves that we can love God while still holding on to something for ourselves. We believe that if God ranks first, just barely above others, then we have done our duty. But God does not accept divided love. He does not negotiate for first place. He demands the whole heart. This demand wounds us because it confronts our deepest attachments. Letting go feels like death. It feels as though the very ties that define us are being cut away. Yet Lewis reminds us of a difficult but life-changing truth: it is in this very pain, in this act of release, that we begin to discover who we truly are in God. The fear that grips us in these moments is powerful. It whispers that God is asking too much. It questions His goodness. It convinces us that surrender will leave us empty and alone. But this fear blinds us to the deeper reality: God is not trying to take life from us, He is trying to give us life that is fuller, deeper, and eternal. Total surrender is the believer's greatest suffering. It is not simply obedience or service, it is the surrender of the heart. And when the heart is offered, it feels as though we are handing over our very essence. Yet this is exactly where God calls us to trust. Christ's promise remains: whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. True love for God cannot coexist with rivals. It is not conditional. And it is not shared. When we finally place every relationship, every desire, every dream on the altar, God does something extraordinary. He fills what we release with His presence. But the altar must be filled, because without sacrifice, there is no fire. Lewis taught that God's power does not rest on half-hearted devotion. As long as we cling to hidden loves and secret attachments, we remain spiritually incomplete. We may serve, we may worship, we may appear devoted, but inside, something is missing. God's fire does not fall on a divided heart. When we surrender fully, something shifts. What we feared losing becomes the very doorway to freedom. God gives us what we could never create for ourselves: His peace, His strength, His power. The sacrifice that once terrified us becomes the path to life. God never asks of us what He has not already done Himself. In Christ, we see perfect surrender. He held nothing back. His love led Him to suffering, humiliation, and death. And now He calls us to follow Him, to take up our cross, to die to self, and to live completely for Him. This calling is not easy. It costs us everything. It leads us through tears, inner conflict, and the slow death of our deepest desires. There are moments when the weight of surrender feels unbearable. When the heart aches for what must be released, and when obedience feels more like loss than devotion. Yet this same path, as painful as it is, leads us towards something far greater than anything we lay down. When God becomes the true center of our love, everything else in our lives begins to settle into its rightful place. What once felt like sacrifice no longer feels like loss, because what we receive in return far outweighs everything we give. This is the paradox of the Christian life. God does not call us to comfort, but He calls us to fullness. He does not promise ease, but He promises life, real life, abundant and eternal. The gift of surrendered love is not immediate relief from pain. It is transformation through it. It is learning to trust God not only when His will aligns with our desires, but especially when it dismantles them. Surrender strips away illusions. It reveals how deeply we rely on created things for security, identity, and meaning. We often believe that certain relationships, ambitions, or dreams are essential to our survival. We fear that without them we will cease to be whole. But surrender exposes a deeper truth: only God is essential. Everything else, no matter how good, was never meant to carry the weight of our souls. This realization is terrifying. It leaves us exposed, vulnerable, and unsure. When God asks us to place our most cherished loves on the altar, we feel as though we are stepping into emptiness. The silence that follows surrender can feel unbearable. We expect immediate reassurance, instant peace, or visible reward. But often, what comes first is stillness. Waiting. A sense of loss that tests the sincerity of our faith, yet it is precisely here, in this uncomfortable, stripped-down place, that God begins His deepest work. When there is nothing left to cling to, we learn what it means to truly trust. Faith matures not in moments of abundance, but in moments when obedience costs us something real. God is less concerned with what we give up than with what we become in the giving. Surrender teaches us humility. It reminds us that we are not in control, that our lives are not our own, and that our understanding is limited. This humility is not weakness, it is freedom. When we stop striving to protect ourselves, to secure our future, and to preserve our own version of happiness, we finally allow God to shape our lives according to His wisdom rather than our fears. As God takes His rightful place at the center of our love, something remarkable happens. Our other loves are not destroyed, they are purified. Relationships are no longer driven by need, fear, or possession. Dreams are no longer rooted in pride or self-importance. Even suffering begins to take on meaning, not because it feels good, but because it draws us closer to the heart of God. Surrender does not mean detachment from life, it means engagement with life as God intended it. When our love is ordered rightly, we are able to love others more deeply, more freely, and more truthfully. We stop demanding that people or circumstances fulfill us in ways they were never meant to. Instead, we love from a place of fullness, not desperation. This is why surrendered love leads to freedom. Freedom from fear of loss. Freedom from the tyranny of unmet expectations. Freedom from the endless pursuit of control. When God becomes our ultimate treasure, the threats of the world lose their power over us. Loss no longer defines us. Success no longer enslaves us. Even death itself loses its terror, because our lives are hidden in Christ. Still, this freedom does not come without struggle. There are days when surrender must be renewed, when old attachments resurface, and when the temptation to reclaim control feels overwhelming. The Christian life is not a single act of surrender, but a daily one. Each day invites us to place our will back on the altar. To choose trust over fear, obedience over comfort, and faith over certainty. In these moments, we are tempted to believe that God is asking too much. We question whether total surrender is reasonable, whether such devotion is necessary. But when we look to Christ, all doubt is silenced. He did not hold back. He did not protect Himself. He did not negotiate the cost of obedience. His love led Him all the way to the cross, and it is at the cross that surrendered love is most clearly revealed. Christ's sacrifice was not merely an act of obedience, it was an act of trust. Trust that the Father's will, though painful, would lead to resurrection. In the same way, our surrender, though it may feel like death, is always aimed at life. God never wastes what we place in His hands. What we release to Him is not destroyed, it is transformed. Our loves become deeper. Our desires become purer. Our hearts become freer. And slowly, often imperceptibly, we find that the emptiness we feared has been filled, not with replacements for what we lost, but with something far greater, God Himself. This is the life Christ invites us into. A life where love is undivided, faith is refined, and freedom is rooted not in control, but in trust. A life where surrender is no longer seen as loss, but as the doorway to joy. A life where God is not one love among many, but the source from which all love flows. This is the gift of surrendered love, this is the path to true freedom, and this is the life that leads us home.